What's going on, everyone? I've been doing a lot of thinking recently, and I've been looking back at all the iPhones and trying to see, which iPhone pretty much brought the most and things like that. I've already done so many videos on that. But I kind of wanted to see in one generation which iPhone potentially was the biggest upgrade from going from one iPhone to the other. And I started getting this idea because recently a lot of people started talking like the iPhones that just came out within the last maybe like 1 or 2 years haven't really been too much of upgrades from going from one generation to the other. And I think I might have an answer to which iPhone could potentially be the best upgrade. So going from one generation to the other in just a 1 year span. Now, at first, for some reason, I thought it could have been the iPhone 4S to the iPhone 5. So that is an honorable mention. And I will talk about that for a second. And pretty much what I found was that the iPhone 4S to the iPhone 5, we pretty much saw the first size increase. We went from a 3.5 inch screen to a 4 inch screen. So that was a pretty big deal in and of itself. And I kind of think it was kind of a step backwards in terms of the exterior since we're kind of on the screen and everything. I feel like the iPhone 4S felt more premium than the iPhone 5, but I like the iPhone 5 design a little bit more. That's kind of a petty thing though. Another thing that came with the iPhone 5 was the Apple A6 chip, which was pretty good of an increase in terms of speed and everything. I think the A6 chip was definitely much better than the A5 chip that the iPhone 4S had, so that in and of itself was a pretty big upgrade. Now, the biggest upgrade, I think, with the internals could possibly be the RAM increase. So we went from half a gig of RAM to 1 gig of RAM, which is a pretty big increase. We increased the RAM by twice the amount. And I'll definitely say that going from an iPhone 4S to the iPhone 5, not only did the exterior change and everything like that, but the speed increased and so many different things like that. Now, the camera didn't really get too much of an improvement. The front camera did though. It went from a 480p camera, I believe, to a 720p camera on the iPhone 5. So that was a pretty big deal too. And this next thing is kind of a little minor, but we pretty much went from a micro SIM card slot to a nano SIM card, and that was a pretty big deal as well. Now, I don't think in the grand scheme of things it really changed much because phones since have gotten bigger, but since the phones were still kind of small, then making the SIM card slot smaller actually made room for other components in the phone too, potentially a bigger battery, even though the iPhone 5 didn't get a bigger battery, at least not by much. It made room in the phone for more parts and different things like that. So that's pretty much what the iPhone 4S to the iPhone 5 brought, and I think that's like second place. That's probably the second best upgrade from going from one iPhone to the other. But I believe that the biggest upgrade in all of iPhone history or whatever from one generation to the other could potentially be the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6s. Now, if you saw the title, you probably already know that, but I think based off my research and everything that this was the biggest upgrade. Now, the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, they brought a lot, they brought bigger sizes and everything like that, but I don't think as a whole it was really as successful as some people might think. In terms of a money sense, it was a most sold iPhone. It sold they made Apple many millions and millions of dollars, and even the iPhone 5s to the iPhone 6 was a pretty big upgrade. But the problems that the iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus, let's just join them together, the problems that they had, they were kind of in a weird situation because they were bending. The 6 Plus was bending, even the iPhone 6, and touch disease was a real thing. It was reoccurring, and really besides the exterior, there really wasn't too much changes in the inside. Speed didn't really increase too much. There was a bit of increase, but not as much as people might think. And overall, I think it was a big upgrade for sure, but it wasn't as big from going from an iPhone 6 to an iPhone 6s. Now, looking at the exterior of both these phones, they look pretty similar, but kind of delving deep, going from an iPhone 6, we had Touch ID 1 to an iPhone 6s, we had Touch ID 2. And even though for a lot of people, they can't even tell the difference, whatever, it's just a little bit more secure. It's just a little bit faster. And that in and of itself, they never made Touch ID 3. So the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus have Touch ID 2 as well. So, and I'm pretty sure Apple's going to bring back Touch IDs, who knows. But also going along with the exterior, we had a new color, which was rose gold, which we never really saw before on any other iPhone. We just had like white, black, space gray, whatever. This was the first time we saw like a different colored iPhone that wasn't like the normal one. I think they might have done a product red one at one point, but this was the first one that wasn't like a limited edition or anything like that. So that's pretty cool. Another thing that it brought was stronger aluminum. That way these phones weren't bending in people's pockets anymore and things like that. It's pretty crazy that that was even happening, but thank God Apple with the iPhone 6s, they did fix it. So a lot of changes were happening in the exterior as well. That in and of itself, I think, was a pretty big upgrade, but I think some of the biggest upgrades and what the internals of the phone brought. Now, the iPhone 6s brought a feature that is super controversial now, but it brought Force Touch, and that is a huge deal. I use Force Touch like every day almost, and it's a really big deal for me. They took it out with the iPhone XR and people had an uproar about it. I'm pretty sure they're going to bring it back next year, but this iPhone 6s brought it, and that's not something we saw with the iPhone 6, 5s, 4s, whatever. And that was a hardware thing. That was a really big deal, and it really made us kind of more involved with the phone. It really differentiated things that like Android couldn't do at the time, and they've tried to implement it on some phones here and there, but Force Touch is just so good on the iPhone, and this is why a lot of people were mad when they took it out on the XR. So that's another crazy thing. Another awesome thing that the iPhone 6s brought was the Apple A9 chip, and it was definitely the fastest chip at the time. And some phone manufacturers, they're like, this was the fastest phone we brought, this and that, and you can't really tell a difference. I mean, like, between a Galaxy S8 and a Galaxy S9, you can probably tell, like, yes, the Galaxy S9 is faster, but you probably won't be able to tell too much. But going from an iPhone 6 to a 6S, there was a humongous difference between those two. And I think maybe the Apple A9 chip had something to do with it. But I think more than that, it was probably the extra gig of RAM that the iPhone 6s brought. So we went from 1 gig of RAM that the iPhone 5 brought to 2 gigs of RAM that the iPhone 6s brought. And I'll tell you, the difference in speed between an iPhone 6 and an iPhone 6s is astronomically crazy. Not even talking about multi-core scores or anything like that, just raw performance. I can tell you, I probably would not be able to use an iPhone 6 on my usage anymore, but I could 100% definitely use an iPhone 6s and not even have any problems with it. And I think that is a huge upgrade for sure. So it was a mixture of the Apple A9 chip and the extra gig of RAM. So we had 2 gigs of RAM, the Apple A9 chip, and really we had such awesome performance, and that was a really big deal. And I remember before, I think I had like an iPhone 6 Plus, and it was around, I think, 2016, and I was thinking about getting the 6S Plus, and I was like, should I get it, should I not? And I was like, it's probably not even that big of an upgrade because they look the same, so there's probably not too much that changed. And that was the dumbest thing I ever said, because there was a humongous change just in the internals alone. Even in the externals there were some changes, but in the internals they were astronomically different. And to kind of top everything off before I get too emotional, another huge upgrade that this phone brought was actually the camera. So we went from an 8 megapixel camera that was on like the iPhone 4S and I think the iPhone 4 as well, all the way to the iPhone 6, and the iPhone 6s starting there brought the 12 megapixel sensor. And with those extra megapixels and everything like that, it allowed us to shoot 4K videos for the first time on an iPhone. And we were able to shoot 1080p videos at 120 frames per second too. So that was a pretty big deal. Just in raw megapixels alone, I mean, think about it, we still only have 12 megapixel sensors. I know we have like dual camera setups, and the cameras now on like the XS and even the XR are much better than what they are on the iPhone 6s. But the fact that the 6s was the first one to bring the 12 megapixel sensors is a pretty big deal. And like I said, it also brought 1080p at 120 frames per second, which is pretty awesome as well. And looking at the front camera, we also got it increased from 720p on the iPhone 6s to 1080p, and it also went from 1.2 megapixels to 5 megapixels on the iPhone 6s. So just huge upgrades everywhere. So it wasn't even just like a minor little thing like, oh, the performance is faster, the camera's better, this and that. It was like actually you would notice these differences. And because of all those things, I think this is why this phone was so good, and it's still so good now, because they really haven't made too many iPhones after this that really have shocked me since probably the iPhone 6s. And like I said, I was pretty oblivious to it at the time, but over time you realize like, man, a device that you probably would overlook is actually one of the most important devices that in the whole entire lineup. And it's kind of weird and it's kind of sad a little bit that Apple stopped creating the iPhone 6s, even though you can still get like an iPhone 6 at like Walmart, which is crazy. The iPhone 6s is so good, and I really hope Apple kind of takes a cue from this, and hopefully they go out and create another product that was like a huge upgrade. I want to be able to say next year that like the iPhone that Apple drops is the biggest upgrade at the time, because I definitely don't think like an iPhone 10 to a 10s is a huge upgrade. I don't think an iPhone 7 to an iPhone 8 is that big of an upgrade either. But when I think of huge upgrades, I think of maybe the iPhone 4S to the 5, but I definitely think that the iPhone 6 to 6s is a bigger upgrade overall. Even though the 5 brought a bigger screen and everything like that, I think the 6s pretty much almost in a way saved Apple. And I might make a video about that too, just because they were in such a rut and they were kind of behind in a lot of ways. But with Force Touch, I think Force Touch really brought distinguishing factor between a standard phone like a Galaxy S6 or S7. I don't know which Android came out at that time, but really distinguished the iPhone against all the other competitors when the iPhone 6s released. So that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it at. A lot of memes, a lot of things were created from the iPhone 6, but I think the iPhone 6s in a way is a worthy upgrade from an iPhone 6. And I want to know, I mean, do you guys think this? Do you guys think I'm right? I mean, there's really no right or wrong, it's just my opinion, but I really do think going from an iPhone 6 to an iPhone 6s is the biggest upgrade in all of Apple's history pretty much right now in terms of iPhones. And that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that don't mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are down below. I talk a lot more about iOS and iPhones and Androids on my second channel. I might be dropping some beats on there too, some instrumentals, so keep it locked down on the second channel. I'm probably going to start a giveaway, I think later today. I'm going to start that video. The giveaway is probably going to start later today, so keep it locked down on the channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll probably tweet a link to the video as well so you guys can enter. And I'm giving away 2 iPhones next month in December, so keep it locked down on the channel so you don't miss those. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.